Welcome to the Brett Davis Podcast. Well, hello, everybody. This is Brett Davis, of course, coming from Attorney King Studios at the, of course, beautiful Coronado. I don't know if Blake Morgan has ever had a chance to be or come to Coronado, but it's a great little city. Thank you, Blake, for being here. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Happy to be here.
So let's talk a little bit about what you do, because it's not what you do, it's what is it you don't do. And with music, I mean, you are, let's go over some of the things that you've done so far. Let's talk about that.
It's yes, it's definitely gotten to the point where I'm adjectives are thrown around in interviews and press coverage of multi-instrumentalist, polymath, musical renaissance guy. And I guess that's true. I never really intended for that to be true, but it sort of worked out that way. I'm a recording artist and songwriter and singer, and then I started playing a bunch of instruments, and then I started a recording studio, and I'm a recording engineer and a record producer, and then I founded a record label, and on, and music advocacy as well. So yeah, I do a lot of things, but it's funny. It really doesn't feel that way. It all just feels like it's different parts of the one thing, which is music. And I love making music, and all of the other things that I do are really just facets of that one thing.
But it's like a hand. There's a hand and there's fingers attached, but they'll become one unit, because you're passionate about all of them. You really don't have any time to really go into any areas that you're not passionate about, because there's so much there for you to do, right?
Yeah, it's not a boring life. And no moss grows over here for sure. But I've really, there are a lot of things that I do musically that I had no initial idea that I would be doing, including even being a singer. I was in a band and we kept firing our singer. And after a while I was like, well, you know what, maybe I'll just be the singer. And then, I'd always been a little recording bedroom geek as a little kid, working on my 4-track, and that's blown up into owning a recording studio and making records. And then that in turn turned into not wanting to make music that I really believe in, and then or rather making music I really believe in, and then having to hand it over to someone who might mess it up in getting it out into the world, which is how I got involved into owning and running a global music company. So we make the music we care about, and then we shepherd it out into the world in a way that finds an audience. You know, so it's really all, it's a part of the whole thing. You know.
And how many hours do you put in a day, would you say, with everything?
37. It's just the 37, and I sleep for a little while. No, it's
37 hours in 24 hours.
That's right. That's right. No, you know, there was a long time, I think, in my career where I was worried that the different things I was doing was, you know, if it works out, you're a Renaissance man. If it doesn't work out, then you're a jack of all trades. I didn't want to be the latter, right? And I was worried. I began to be worried that people wouldn't understand that about me. And so for a long time, publicly, I wouldn't, if I had a new record coming out, I wouldn't talk about the records I was also producing. I wouldn't talk about running the label. And if a record that I had produced came out and I was doing press for that, I wouldn't talk about my own songs. Nobody told me to do that. I don't know where I got the idea that that was a good idea. It was not a good idea. The thing that makes me interesting, if anything makes me interesting musically, is that I do a lot of things, and I hope I do them well, you know? So that's something that's actually changed. And it's interesting that I think more and more people, when they connect with what I do, they connect with the fact that there's a lot of different stuff going on.
So what is it you haven't done that's maybe on coming up that you want to do?
Well, this year is focused on my new record. My new record's coming out in May, and it's been a minute since I've had a new record with my name on it, even though over the last 6 or 7 years, I've produced 25 records with other artists that I'm playing on and recording and getting out into the world. So, you know, this year is wonderfully refreshing, because someone smart once said that the shoemaker's shoes always get fixed last. And so this year, my shoes are actually getting fixed first. And that's also, you know, right next to getting other records out into the world that mean the world to me, that I've worked on, like David Poe's new record and the Canoe's new record, and the list goes on and on. So but for me, honestly, the exciting thing that's happening this year that's just ahead are these singles that are coming out. I have a new music video coming out tomorrow, in fact, and then the record comes out in May. So that's I think what's been exciting over the past few years, COVID notwithstanding. It's been a surprising bunch of years with me on the road, with the studio and with the label. I began a residency here in New York City at a great venue called Rockwood Music Hall. It's a famous venue, and very much to my surprise, the show began to sell out, and it's sold out 27 straight times now.
Oh,
and that amount of attention, I guess, it began to fuel the idea that I should go out of the city and actually perform elsewhere as well. And that brought me on this tour of many years of about 150,000 miles and 200 shows all around the world. So I've actually been on the road for the last few years, and to finish my record and to have that coming out now hand in hand with all the touring I've done is really kind of the next chapter for me. It's really kind of exciting.
well, let's talk about some of the artists that you've worked with. Let's go down the list because there's numerous ones, maybe some ones that maybe are familiar to the audience.
Sure. Oh, I mean, right at the beginning of my career on my first record, I sang a duet with Lenny Kravitz, and it was, that was incredibly fun. I've produced Lesley Gore's last record, her final record before she died. She was my godmother. And
Really?
yeah. And she and I made a great record several years ago. But since then, recently, Yanata, if you go to ecrmusicgroup.com, you'll see all of the artists that I work with. And we're a different kind of record label because we really start with the idea of what kind of record do we want to make, and then we actually make it the best we can, and then we figure out how to get it out into the world. I think what a lot of record companies do is they figure out how much money they need to make, and then what's the best thing they can maybe make to get that money. Mm-hmm. We do it the other way around, which is what's the best thing we can make, and then, oh my God, how are we going to make any money at it? So yeah, if you go to ecrmusicgroup.com, you'll see all of the artists on our roster are artists whose records I've been producing. So it's been something of a ride.
So you have probably a lot of varied type of taste because you do deal with a lot of variety of artists and types of music. What artists or groups resonate with you that you still are very passionate about and you like to listen to?
Yeah. So, Tom Waits says he's my hero, and he says as an artist, what you absorb, you will secrete. And the most important artist and band in my musical life has always been the Beatles. There's something that imprints. There's for those of us where that band put their fingerprint, kind of in the middle of our forehead as kids. You can't ever really recover from it, and nor would I want to.
Right.
So.
I agree with you, by the way. That's one of my favorite groups.
Yeah, it's an inescapable, gigantic gravity well of importance for me in my musical life. But this new record of mine actually is maybe the least Beatle-y of the records I've made, and it actually draws from a lot more influences in the power pop and post-punk zone. I was listening to a lot of, The Police is another band that's meant the world to me, and this record is the first record I've made that it kind of sounds like that. And it sounds like I've been listening to the Police all my life, or the Cars, or bands like this. And it's kind of fun and exciting for me that this record, it sounds like another one of my records, but there's a little bit of a different flavor to it. And so it's one of the things that's kind of fun about it for me.
So what's your favorite Beatles album?
Oh my God. Well,
that one, there's this one. I know there's a lot. I think they're all good.
Yeah.
Different times.
My favorite Beatle record is also my favorite record, and that's Revolver. So, but I watched the Get Back special when it came out over Thanksgiving. I've watched it 3 times, and we could spend the whole rest of this show just talking about that, and I'd be very happy. But yeah, one of the things about them that's remarkable, I was talking about being a kid and falling in love with the Beatles. I don't know how many kids. There's something about that band that they get their way into you when you're a kid. And it's not just the funny songs like Octopus's Garden or Yellow Submarine. Like, I remember how it felt the first time I heard She Loves You. And I freaked out, like screaming, like I knew what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, And they're just, I don't know if 6-year-old kids really get into Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd, you know?
No, they don't. They don't.
Right. So,
well, here's something to think about based on what you just said. The time frame you're talking about, we didn't have a lot of white noise.
Mhm.
We had very basic, we had maybe a few, television stations. We had way less communication as far as with music. We had their major stations, but now there's so many different formats and so many different things. I mean, do you think somehow all the clutter, all the noise is somehow one of the reasons why we're not having kids of that age, this age now, like six compared to 6 before? Is it all the noise that maybe one of the reasons they're not really hearing the types of things that are out there?
Yeah, I think noise is one way to describe it. Banality is another way to describe it. There's so much great music that's being made right now. It is hard to people use the word bandwidth. It is hard to find the bandwidth for all of it. But my favorite art has always been when there's a nexus of the very best version of something also winding up being the most popular version of that thing. So I'm a William Shakespeare guy. I'm a Beatles guy. I'm an Alfred Hitchcock guy. When
sounds like you and I are very similar. How crazy.
Well,
we have a lot of the same passions and interests. Well, those are some of my favorite people.
Hey man, and we've got the right haircut, so we're doing it, you know.
Do we start a new religion?
Sure. I like a lot of music that people might not know about, but I like a lot of music and I like a lot of movies that people do, and I love it when the best version of something also winds up resonating on a global level that really moves our story, humanity's story. One of my favorite bands of all time I'm seeing tonight at the Beacon Theater, and it's a band named Punch Brothers. They're incredibly successful on the one hand. They're not a household name on the other. The brilliant Chris Thile is their lead singer and mandolin player, and they've meant the world to me over these last 5, 6, 7 years. And that was really exciting for me as well, that there could be a new band that would move me as much as the Police or the Beatles, and affect my music just as profoundly. So that's exciting too, when that happens.
Have you gotten to know the band?
I have not gotten to know the man, but I met Chris Thile actually at Rockwood Music Hall, and I went up to him after he had done a solo show, and I said, I just want to tell you that your music has, I said, I'm a musician, and your music has hit my musical life like the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs. And he put his mandolin down, and he put his arms up in the air. He was like, yes, yes. And he gave me this beautiful, generous, sweet hug and wouldn't let go. It was a lovely moment, and I'll never forget it.
That's phenomenal. The mandolin is I love the sound of the mandolin.
Yeah, he's probably the greatest mandolin player in the world.
Wow.
Right. T-Bone Burnett compared him to Louis Armstrong in that Chris Thile is here at the beginning of the 21st century, the way Louis Armstrong was with us at the beginning of the 20th century, and each of them transformed an instrument that wasn't thought of the way we now think of them. They were the people who transformed that instrument, the trumpet and then the mandolin, in a way that to get us to think about it and hear about it in a different way that we ever had before.
So your album's coming out in May
20th. Yep.
Are you touring?
Yeah, I'm about to go on the road at the end of March. I've got my New York Rockwood Music Hall residency on March 24th, and then I'm going to do a few shows with David Poe, who's one of my label mates, who's a wonderful songwriter and a great friend. So we're going to do four shows together, 2 in New York, 1 outside of Philly, and 1 in Baltimore. Then I come back, then I go to LA, and I'm performing with Yanata for her new record, and then we come back to New York, and I do a show with her again here. And then May 19th, I play the big room, the main stage at Rockwood for my record release.
And all that information is on your website. So if anybody wants to go and watch the concerts, of course, and see you, they can go there.
Yeah, BlakeMorgan.com. All the info is right there.
I would love to go to see him in LA. Yeah, I don't like LA, but for him, I would go there.
Hey, Blake, I have a video clip here. Could I play just a little clip of it?
Sure. I don't know what it is, but sure.
I don't know what it is either. I'm curious. I hope it's not from like an ex-girlfriend or something like that.
Hold on a
That
second.
wasn't me.
This is crazy.
All right, here you go.
I could hope and pray, I could lose my way, I could go down below or up above. It's you I would love. I could break and run, even race the sun. I could go down below, up above.
You cut it too soon. I was enjoying it.
I know, but I didn't want, you know what? I love your music, like
Thank you. That's
producer
very
Sarah,
kind.
and I have to tell you, I saw that video.
She knew all. She was singing the lyrics. I'm like, when did you learn? When did you learn the song? You don't have the lyrics here, do you?
No.
Wow. That's the first time she's ever that I can remember in a long time remembering lyrics like that.
Oh, well, that's you made my day. Come on. This is great. Thank you.
I love your voice.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that's a special song. That's the first single from the new record. And the second one's just come out, and the second music video, which we will hope that Sarah loves just as much. The second music video actually comes out tomorrow.
I can't wait.
Can we post that on our site when it comes out? Can we get it and blast it a little bit for him?
We'll blast whatever Blake wants blasted.
Well, I can see why my cousin Marty speaks so highly of you. I mean, he's always had a good ear for music anyway, but you're
and a big Beatle fan. Let's not forget.
a huge Beatle fan.
That's right.
I'll tell you, I saw Paul McCartney 2 years ago. I don't know if you've ever seen him in concert by himself.
I have.
And you're right about the music being at 5 or 6 years old being put into my mind, because the first Beatle album that I ever heard was Rubber Soul.
Sure.
And the first song that came to mind was Norwegian Wood as a kid.
And you never recover from it. I mean,
no, it's still implanted. And so when I saw McCartney, of course I'm a huge fan. I love the Beatles. I mean, like you and Marty. And but when I heard McCartney, I literally was transported back to that time, and I started crying.
Yeah,
it was the craziest thing. It took me back, and I was there. And it's amazing how powerful that music still is.
Absolutely. I know exactly the emotional, I know exactly the emotions that you're talking about. I experienced the same thing. I've seen him several times. And in fact, his son, James McCartney, was on my label. We released 2 of his EPs in his first collected EP. So I got to work inside the tent a bit with them. And I got to see him I got to see Paul at Yankee Stadium. And I had that feeling with 70,000 people at Yankee Stadium singing songs. Everyone's singing along in this enormous feeling of love and connection. And 80-year-old people with 8-year-old people next to them, knowing the lyrics and caring about how much that art has informed our lives and our country and the world. It's a rare and beautiful thing.
We covered a talent show. We were a media sponsor for a talent show over the weekend where we had people from all over the world attend in Coronado. And one thing that we noticed, first of all, there was a lot of young individuals. And Sarah, I'll have Sarah send you a clip of this one young guitar player.
Oh, please.
That will blow your mind. I mean, it is like
12-year-old prodigy.
Playing Van Halen to Zeppelin to Guns N' Roses. And it's only been playing for 2 years.
Wow.
And doing it very well. But I think you'll be really blown away. But one thing we noticed about that talent show with all the young individuals that were there, a lot of the music was the music that you said that you liked. And I'm curious why that they're playing the music from our time instead of really music from this time.
Well, I do think that something has happened. It's weird. I go to the grocery store. I go to the rental car place. I'm walking through the airport, and I'm not hearing the songs of today. I'm hearing songs from the 80s, maybe the 90s, certainly before that, 70s and 60s. There seems to be, and that's not the way it used to be. You know, as tastes would change, as new music would come out, that's what you'd hear all the time. There is some kind of frozen in amber thing that we're dealing with popular music. And again, I love so much of the music that's coming out now, but it doesn't, you were talking about the white noise, you know, I don't know that music permeates us the way music used to. And so there's one of the magical things about pop music is you and I can each talk about Norwegian Wood, and we've never talked to each other before, but we know something about each other just in talking about that song because we've both listened to that song. There's a commonality to it. And again, it's a piece of our humanity. There's a piece of recognition to it. And so, you know, when I'm at the grocery store and I'm hearing Blondie, I'm happy because I love Blondie, but I really shouldn't be. I should be hearing Taylor Swift. I should be hearing other, you know, and there does seem to be less and less than that of that. There was a great science fiction movie called Children of Men that came out like maybe 10 years ago or so, about how it's a dystopic vision of the future where human beings have lost the ability to have kids. So they're living in a world where there hasn't been a new kid in 17 years. And it just changes their whole society. It's a really powerful movie. There's some part of that reminds me of where we're at with pop music, where the songs and tracks and even artists aren't permeating our collective consciousnness quite the same way as we used to. And I'm not saying that, I'm saying that that's not a good thing. I wish that was different. I wish that I went to the grocery store and I did hear songs that were actually being put out this month or this year, you know?
Right.
So
it's not the same excitement when you know there's a certain album coming out, is there?
Well, I think that like our society, like our politics, I think that we've been pulled apart. So everyone has their lane. They have their musical lanes. They have their movie lanes. They have, instead of, you know, I'm a native New Yorker. I've lived in Manhattan my whole life. One of the greatest things about New York is that the city is going to challenge you and it's going to make you uncomfortable. You're going to sit next to people on the subway you normally wouldn't sit next to. You're going to walk down the street and pass people. You know, I could walk from here to the corner and I'd hear 5 languages on the street, you know, but that does something to you. It's vibrant. It's powerful. And I think one of the things maybe I worry about with today's landscape in pop music is that we've all been sent down our lanes. That's what we're done. That's what's done to us by streaming. The algorithms find out what you like. What does Brett like? Well, we're going to give him more of what he likes. And that's nice. But you also need to hear things that you wouldn't have liked, that you wouldn't have been exposed to, because that's how we grow. That's how we get surprised. That's how I discovered Punch Brothers, because I happened to hear something. Well, what is that? It changed my life. You know, Spoon is another band that means the world to me. And I remember the first time I heard a Spoon song, I was in an ice cream parlor. I was like, what in the world is this? And I wouldn't have been exposed to it otherwise, you know? So that's a really important thing about art of any kind, but it's definitely important about when it comes to music. And I would argue, especially pop music.
Country music has also changed the last 20 years. It's not what it once was. It's more poppy, right?
Yeah, totally. You know, it's.
Do you like country music?
I like old country music, you know,
Okay.
But I don't tend to like, and this is an oversimplification, I don't mean to insult anybody, but I don't like any music that sounds like a commercial. And a lot of modern country music sounds like it sounds like a delivery system. It's like the music is secondary. We're just trying to deliver it to get it onto the radio or to get it onto a streaming platform in a way that would put up big numbers. There's a lot of strategy involved, and I wish there was more art involved.
Well, I mean, we were talking about how music's changed. I mean, look at even just the excitement of seeing an album cover.
Yeah.
I mean, that was in itself artistry. I mean, some of the things they came up with, I mean, that's another lost part of music that I used to love to see the covers of the albums. I mean, some of it was just so creative and beautiful.
It's tough. It's tough as someone who loves album covers and loves making records, that we're living in this thumbnail world where the size of my thumb right there is about the size that you'll see my album cover. And it's changed album covers. You have to be much bigger and have fonts that are larger and photographs that are larger, because we're all living in this thumbnail world. There are lots of great album covers that are still made today, but one hopes that the vinyl resurgence that we hear so much about, we hope that it lasts, and I think it brings some of that magic back to it. Coming back from a gig where or a concert that you've been to, where you buy a record, and in the car, on the subway, on the way back, you're just looking at that album cover. You can't wait to get it home and listen to it. And you fall into the whole world of the record based on the artwork and the font they've used and how it feels. And, it's magical.
Do you listen to vinyl?
I do. And in fact, we're just starting with my label to really get serious about pressing vinyl. So it's going to be something that we do more.
So there is a demand still. And I wonder if a lot of these younger kids, we have an old record player here at the office, and we have vinyl. Mm-hmm. Some of the music we talked about that we like is actually here. Some original stuff too. Yeah. Which I love Bowie, by the way, also.
Me too.
But I'll tell you, there seems, I wonder if the younger generation is gravitating towards the vinyl as well.
No, they are. And it's really heartening. It's great. I mean, the connection that vinyl provides between the listener and the artist, the connection it provides between the listener and the art itself, the value it brings to a record, the value it brings to the concept of a side one and a side two, and it brings value and magic to it. And fortunately, young listeners are really turned on by vinyl right now, and I hope it continues.
I do too, and I think I'll tell you, I miss Marty will remember this if he's listening. I hope he is listening. My grandparents had the entertainment center, if you remember what those were, made out of wood.
Right, sure.
With the stereo system and the TV, and it was beautiful. It was a beautiful system, and
it's like an altar.
Right.
It's an altar to music,
But look at the stereo systems, how elaborate they once were, like in the 70s, even the early 80s. I mean, there was a lot of money put into those, the speaker systems, the sound system.
Sure. Very
high tech. Those are still around, aren't they?
I guess, I mean, most of us are listening to music off our phones, off our laptops. Hopefully more and more, with the vinyl. And this is something that, streaming services, I have become a vocal advocate for musicians' rights, and I rail against streaming companies for their low payments and their micro penny payments to artists. And that's a whole other discussion. But there's another discussion, which is that all streaming platforms do not sound alike. And so, one of the many reasons to question one's subscription to Spotify, for example, and they've been in the news recently with the Joe Rogan controversy and beyond. So I have many reasons to not listen to music on Spotify, but one of the reasons is they're one of the worst sounding platforms. And so one of the great things about the entertainment system that you're talking about, think of the pains that were taken to make these things sound great, so that your records would sound great. There was pride in it. And I think we can show that same pride and understand that Apple Music sounds unbelievably better than Spotify. Tidal sounds unbelievably better. There's high res streaming, and there's really not. And Spotify and YouTube are at the bottom of the list. And that's something that I hope people start taking into account, because I know that the people who are listening, to their music, they want it to sound great.
So why are the YouTubes and the Spotify so popular? Is it their advertising? Is it their marketing? Do people not know the difference?
Well, for starters, it's because they're free. That's the reason.
Okay.
So Apple Music, you have to subscribe. Tidal, you have to subscribe. Spotify's free. And YouTube is free. But even, again, getting away from the economics of those two platforms, there's no reason that they can't make them sound better. They can have higher bit rates, and they can have much, much better audio. But like a lot of businesses, they won't do the best that they can if they don't have to. And so I think if people, big companies change when the people who, when the people make them do so. So I think that's something that people could really voice, and they can voice it by changing their subscription to a better service. By the way, Apple pays artists twice as much as Spotify, and songwriters 3 times as much as Spotify. So, and I don't work for Apple, but I'm just telling you, it's the truth. They pay better and they sound better. So there are alternatives and better alternatives to Spotify.
So, how many songs have you written?
Oh God, I don't know. I really don't know.
No rough guess.
But I can tell you, what I can tell you this though, when I make a record, I'm not one of those guys who writes 20 songs and then puts the 10 best on the record. I've never been like that. I write those 10 songs and they're on the record. So
You don't care.
I do care, but they're not for me anyway. I'm not the kind of songwriter who would finish something and be like, oh, you know what, this isn't very good. Like if I really felt that way, then the song's not done, or that idea is just not going to work. And Down Below or Up Above, which is the song that Sarah just played in that video, there are parts of that song, pieces of the melody in that song that I've had around for 11 years. And I couldn't find the right lyric for it, and I couldn't find the right way to finish that song. But I had it. I knew I was going to get back to it. I knew that it was going to be really good. I knew that it was going to be really important to me. So sometimes it takes a long time, but songwriters do this in a variety of ways. And I'm one of the people who will, you know, when I'm writing a song, I even say to people I'm working with, or I know, I'm like, oh, you know what, I got one by the tail. I've got a song by the tail, or I've got a pull on the line. It's like I'm a fisherman, you know. It's like I felt a tug on the line there. I got something there, and it means I'll come back to it because I know that I stumbled onto something that could be really good.
So, you like everything you do. Is there one area in music that you gravitate more towards than the others? Well, I get asked a lot, you know, what do I like more, making music in the studio or being on stage and performing? And there's no part of my musical life that I would want to live without, and I don't have to live without it. So that's a good thing. But generally speaking, to answer your question in the simplest way, I like making things more than I like playing things. And I like playing things a lot. But at the end of the day, the gig is over, but the record is forever. And you like the process. You like fresh,
yeah.
You like making things.
Yeah. I like making records so much. It frightens me. I love making records. I love every part of it. And I love playing music live more than I can express. But if I had to choose Sophie's choice, I'd rather make things than do anything else. So of course, writing a song is making something. Absolutely. So you really love that process. I love songwriting. I love songwriting, and I love recording. You know, I think a lot of people, for whatever reason, they don't necessarily understand some of what goes into making a record, even when they know a lot about music. So like when someone says, oh, I'm a record producer, people don't always know what that means, but somehow intrinsically, we all understand film much better. So we know what a movie director does. Well, guess what? That's exactly what a record producer does. We don't actually seem to know what a recording engineer does a lot of times, but we know what a camera person does. We know what a cinematographer does. Cinematographer is the recording engineer on a record. And the songwriter is the person who wrote the screenplay. So songwriter is the screenplay writer. The cinematographer is the recording engineer, and the director of the movie is the record producer. And I love being those things and doing those things. And when you think about music that way, and how records are made, you know, it somehow starts to make sense, right? Well, you almost sound like a music version of Chaplin, Charlie Chaplin, who was my hero, who also created his own music. Oh, he did, and I got to tell you, he's so great, it makes me angry. Isn't he phenomenal? Even to this day, we're still talking about him, right? And everybody else is. I know. I mean, if I tell my girlfriend that you just brought Charlie Chaplin up in reference anywhere within 1,000 light years of me, like I'm never going to recover. Like she's going to be so. Well, I mean, have you seen the latest documentary on the lost footages of the interviews with him? Yep. They're fascinating. Totally. He's talk about a polymath. I mean, not only did he write and direct and star in all of those movies, he also wrote all the music. It's too much to handle. I think I heard something like a majority of the great work that he did was before he was 30. Yeah. But you know what? He never stopped. And well, he did. I think he had other circumstances around him of people trying to bring him down for whatever the reasons were. Well, yeah, he was blacklisted because they tried to convince the world that he was a communist, which he wasn't. And The Great Dictator, of course, is a timeless movie. a pro-democracy, anti-fascist movie. But I mean, City Lights is my favorite, maybe my favorite movie.
That's actually my favorite.
The last 30
Is that
seconds.
the one with the blind girl?
Yes, sir, it is. And the last 30 seconds of that movie, I can't even handle emotionally.
I think we've seen that movie together. It's to me, it's a beautiful movie.
Oh my God, it's a gorgeous movie with so much brilliance in it, technical brilliance and emotional brilliance.
Yeah.
He's really, to me, the only indispensable filmmaker of the 20th century. Without him, it's kind of like the Beatles. Without the Beatles, how could those four people ever come together in that way to be a musical force like that, in a way that would inform what would happen in Western music, afterwards? And it's the same thing with Chaplin. If you remove Chaplin from the equation of the 20th century in cinema, where would we possibly be? He innovated virtually all of it, and a great musician to boot.
And he owned his own studio.
That's right. So
now it's owned by Jim Henson's Productions.
And that's right. He started United Artists, which was,
sure.
I mean, he is my ultimate hero. In fact, there are a couple Charlie Chaplin nods in the video that Sarah just played, with me twirling my umbrella under the bridge with my.
There you go.
So
see, I didn't even know any of this. I could see we have a lot of the same similarities.
Yeah.
So you play a few instruments too, don't you? How many do you play?
Well, I grew up being a piano player. That's what I thought I was going to be doing. And then rock and roll took hold, and I started playing bass and I started playing guitar much later than most people, actually. And then I was in a band, and we kept firing our singer. And eventually I was like, I'm tired of firing people. Maybe I'll just try to sing. And the rest of my bandmates were like, but you don't sing. And I was like, well, just
now.
Now I do, yeah, it's
a phenomenal voice.
Thank you. It's handy to play a bunch of instruments also, because as a songwriter, if I'm stuck writing something and I've been working on the piano, I can step over, I can walk away from the piano, pick up the guitar and do that. And it feels like you're co-writing with yourself. It reframes maybe what you're working on. But playing a bunch of different instruments is really just like being able to speak a few languages. Yeah. And for me anyway, it informs me musically. And by the way, the most important musical instrument that I play is the recording studio, because the recording studio is an instrument. And Brian Eno even says, if there was a sign above the door of every recording studio that said, this recording studio is an instrument, it would change how people think of the recording process. So, one's recording console, one's little 4-track tape deck that one had when one was a kid, that's an instrument. And how you use it, how you would use it is completely different than how I would use it, or the next guy or the next gal. And that's something that's magical about it to me.
Do you work with, do you mentor children at all? Do you work with kids?
I wouldn't say that I work with kids. Because of the music advocacy I've been doing with the I Respect Music campaign, I've been doing a lot of lectures in high schools and colleges. So that I do a lot, but there's no recording experience, and there's really no way, there's no recording experience that I'm a part of. And there's no way to run a record label with a roster of artists and a roster of imprints as I do, where you aren't kind of nurturing adults, but you're nurturing them anyway. There's a definite parent relationship that I have with my artists, which I want, because I want to protect them, and I want to make sure that we're both protecting their art and also finding the best way to get it out in the world. So I don't have kids of my own, but I've often joked that my songs are my kids and my records are my kids. But our artists at the label and our imprints, I think I kind of get my child rearing rocks off in that way, and mentoring people in that way. Yeah.
We have a group of kids in San Diego where the percentage of students, or what's the percentage of them are homeless? 40% of the student population is homeless.
Oh my God.
And a lot of these kids, are really, they're very bright, because we've been working with this school. The gentleman that has the podcast with us, who is involved with, his name's Jeff Willer. He's involved with the the foundation for the Harbor Police. He runs it, brought it to our attention. So a lot of these kids have gifts and they don't even realize they have them.
Yeah.
And so we've been bringing great mentors into this school and trying to, at least maybe if somebody hears something in that group of kids, maybe it's going to be a light bulb moment where they're like, oh, I want to go into music, or I want to be, an accountant, or so we're trying to bring those types of individuals to this young campus. And it'll warm your heart because they're all so respectful and they're all so nice. And a lot of them don't really have a lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. It's fantastic work. Yeah.
I would love for you, if you're ever in San Diego, we would love for you to come and maybe talk to the kids and maybe mentor them somehow, let them hear your music and see if maybe there's some kids out there that have never thought about music, but maybe don't even realize they have a gift.
I'd love it. Consider it done anytime. I
think you'd really enjoy it. And I think you'd get a lot out of it. I think the kids would get a lot out of you because
sure.
you're amazing. And I love your spirit. And we need more of that in the world right now. So on one final note, what one thing best describes you? What one word?
Well, it's a hyphenated word. So music maker. That's the best way to describe me. Whatever I'm doing, whatever instrument I'm holding, or whatever record I'm working on, I'm a music maker, and I'm proud to be.
Blake Morgan, thank you so much for being on my show. I appreciate it.
Me.
I look forward to seeing you in person.
Absolutely.
Okay, everybody, get a chance. Let's go to his website. Did we put that information up there? Does he have a website?
Yep, it's on the bottom streaming.
There we go.
There on the bottom.
Everybody check his website out. His music is awesome. I think I have a new favorite artist. And I don't say that very easily, by the way.
I have a new favorite show. So we're getting somewhere.
I'll give you the $100 bill later when nobody's around. We'll keep it on the down low.
Blake, thank you for your incredible talent. Oh my gosh. That video, you are a music maker. You're everything maker. I mean, watching that, you are put in a different, it's almost like you go into a different realm.
Yeah.
Watching it. And it is just.
You promise me, Sarah, that you're going to write to me, and you can be honest if you don't like it, but spoiler alert, you're going to like it. Get the new video that's coming out tomorrow, because I
can't wait.
I can't wait either. I look forward to listening to more of your music and staying in better touch with you.
Terrific, man. Thanks.
Take care, Blake. Good luck on everything.
Cheers.
Thank you, Blake.
And I want to say thank you to our sponsors, of course, because without the sponsors, we don't have a show. Attorney King, thank you for believing in our dream to bring different stories to everybody all around the world. Thank you so much for that. Thank you to IB Fitness, of course, and Marina Teal. And of course, Cody Martinez with Saquon Casino and Resort. And last and not least, of course, the infamous Tim Aaron, who is also the owner of Nicky Rotten's and also has his own podcast here. Thank you to everybody. Remember, be nice to each other, and yippee-ki-yay.